Hi, we are Tim and Carolina, and we are a couple of friends, colleagues, and former coworkers, and we love contact and building products. And for the past 15, probably more now,
Longer.
years, we've been we've been bouncing ideas off each other, talking perspectives, residential, commercial, sales, technical, market research, go to market, data analysis, and a lot more.
So much more. That inspired us to share our experience and guest experiences to broaden perspectives in the construction verse. And it's all made possible by you and support from Advancing Prefabrication and Project Fluent, which I noticed, Carolina, you have a QR code up on your LinkedIn header. People can take a 3-minute assessment. So hopefully everyone gets to do that. So regarding advancing prefabrication, use Build Perspectives 10 for 10% off advancingprefabrication.com. February 2nd through 4th. That's coming up just around the corner in Dallas. We'll be recording several
Y'all,
interviews live from that event, which would be really cool. We haven't done, I think we only did one maybe with Michael Russo. We talked about careers at AIA last year. So welcome. We'll talk more about that later. Welcome everybody to the Horrible Bosses episode of Build Perspectives. I'm just kidding. But you did say something that made me like take a pause this morning when we were talking about this topic. You mentioned this term I've never heard before called LinkedIn Oatmeal, and I found it to be first of all self-explanatory and new and interesting. And we're taking a positive look at leadership today, and I just wanted to see what was behind your your comment of that.
well, maybe we can do a full episode on LinkedIn oatmeal because I think, the listener right now knows what we mean by that because we all see it. There's even an Instagram account that makes fun of some of these LinkedIn posts. So, anyway, what set
That's
me
very meta.
off,
That's very meta. Link at
it's
Instagram
just,
Instagram channel that talks about LinkedIn posts, LinkedIn oatmeal. That's
uh,
hilarious.
yeah, it's pretty funny. So what got me off on this like rabbit hole was a lot of leadership posts that we see out there. And so I thought maybe we can highlight real stories from real leaders that we've both had that were just excellent leaders and people who have shaped our careers. I had, one of the best bosses I ever had was the second boss out of college, and I was 24 at the time, and he really was one of the people who mentored me and shaped how I eventually ended up leading teams. So I thought, hey, these are not unicorns. These are real people, and there are traits that you can look for but outside of the platitudes and the oatmeal that we see out there on LinkedIn. I thought maybe we could just address like the real things you can look for. And then maybe we can end with some red flags of, these are the things that you look out for. And also to point out that these are real people. I've been a leader. I haven't always been a perfect leader. I've made mistakes. I have done the wrong thing. So hopefully this is going to absolve me of some of that too.
I love it. This is very cathartic to talk about things like this because number one, it helps us think through like number one, what kind of leaders do we want to be? What kind of leaders do we want to look for? What kind of leadership traits should our industry focus on or look for or train for? I think everyone's got stories good and bad over the years, and there's so some of this will probably really resonate with folks.
Yeah, and a lot of I remember you've said this many times over the years. People generally want to be good. And so if you hear some of these things and you kind of are looking within and going, well, crap, I do some of these things, then, it's okay. You can, as soon as you see it, you can do something about it. So, shall we get started with the first trait of a good leader?
Let's get started.
All right. So this is a real thing. Back in the 90s, I worked at a distribution center and as a process engineer, and I had a boss who, I was brand new. I was a brand new at this industry, brand new at doing this kind of a job, and I'd never worked in a distribution center before. And so this particular manager would walk the floor with me. He taught me PLCs and controls and the things. Those are things that programmable logic controllers, they control how the conveyors work, and if we had laser scanners at the time, and so they allow you to route product and do things. So PLCs are very cool, and he taught me how they work. He held my hand. He let me run relocation of the lines while he was gone. And in short, he didn't give me just tasks as a 24-year-old, fresh out. He gave me range. Excuse me. He gave me all these different things to do. He was seeing like what I was good at. He was testing all of these different ways that I could shine, that I could do well, and he gave me real projects. So to me, that was development. He was actively trying to develop me and my talents, and not just throwing delegation or not throwing busy work at me.
One thing I really like about that is there's a practical side of that. So if someone is really good at something, they pick it up really quick. You learn that about them, and there's productivity. And then the other side of it is you learn potentially what someone maybe isn't that great at. But out of both those things, what the person learns is that someone put faith in me, and they're okay with me this either not working great or me not doing a great job, but also hopeful, like, well, this person's going to learn something, and maybe they'll be really great at it. Maybe this will be, something that will we could really use, but there's not enough of a maybe appetite in some organizations to let people learn, let the leader
Stumble,
learn
yeah.
about their people, and let the
Mhm.
people learn about new skills and understanding different parts of the organization.
Right. And that's perfect because that leads us to the next trait, which is a good leader will recognize latent ability in their team and their people. So just what's the potential? Maybe that person has never done that one particular thing, but you think they have it in them because you notice that because you've got experience and you've seen it in other people and you know what sort of how that presents. And so you give that person a project that takes them completely out of their comfort zone, but that or you have a hunch that they can do. So in for me, I would love to hear a story about you of if how that happened in your career. But for me, I remember I was given a project to create an ADA gate for a gentleman that worked at our facility who he was on a wheelchair and he had to wheel himself all the way around for almost half a mile to go to the break room and to go to the bathroom. And so my assignment was to create an ADA gate in one of the little turns of the conveyor so that he could just cut through and then go right into the break room. And I had not the first clue. Yes, I'd went to engineering school. I mean, I knew how to plan a project like that, but he mentored me through the entire thing, and I felt so good. It felt good to do something good for somebody, and like we even filed a patent for it. So that was super cool.
There are probably, hopefully, people by the stage of their career where they've been doing something maybe in different industries or the same industry have multiple stories like that. Because, see, I started in construction. I started mowing lawns when I was 13. I started at a company called Birch Equipment when I was 16 in high school. So worked there after school, and I would steam clean the heavy equipment. And it was amazing what they trusted me with. And even went after I wrecked the front end of one of the big delivery trucks, like not a pickup truck, but one of the big delivery trucks, because I just didn't have the trailer. The I had the trailer, the wheels adjusted way out, so the turning radius was huge, and I just took the front end off of this truck.
Oh
And
my gosh.
everyone comes running out. You know, the next week, after it kind of calmed down, and I didn't have any work scheduled till I came back again on Tuesday or Wednesday, but the uh, the manager of the location, who I'm still friends with, and he's 30 years older than me, and he goes, "You know what? This is what insurance is for. This is what insurance is for. We have a small deductible that we have to pay, which I didn't even know what that was at the time. I was 16, and." he said, "But you learned something, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes." And I still worked there for like two and a half more years. And it was amazing. That was the first example of where someone like really empowered me to and I learned so much about heavy equipment, about welding, about mechanics, about construction, working with customers, doing deliveries and fixing problems and stuff like that. It was pretty amazing experience, which I don't know that many 16-year-olds get to have.
Yeah, and he gave you grace when you screwed up, which was a completely expected thing. I mean, I don't know that I that I could drive a big old truck like that at 16. Oh my gosh, I was so reckless at the time. So yeah, so good leaders don't just motivate, but they reveal things about you as a team member, as an employee.
Yeah, and like you mentioned about the latent skills, I think that a lot of what I took into the industry, and years later, his name is Ron Barter. Years later, I would talk with Ron about, hey, do you remember this? He goes, yeah, and look at you did all these cool things in the industry. You've been traveling all over the place, and he says really gratifying to see that and to notice that someone has uh, that in them and to be able to support it, it's pretty wild. And that's a small example. Of course, we've had much bigger responsibilities in our careers, together and separately.
Yeah. So another trait that I was thinking about, I was remembering stories of working in different places, and it led me to think, okay, good leaders also reward behavior. They don't reward politics. And I think that's something that is very unfortunate that like we've evolved or devolved into lately in our industry in every corporate environment. It's all about optics and politics, but a good leader is going to reward your behavior. I remember, yeah, I thought I was going to get in trouble for it. So there was this lady who was a janitor at a place where I worked, and she didn't speak English, but obviously I speak Spanish, and I got to know the lady and I got friendly with her. She would mostly clean like the break room and the bathrooms and stuff. And so she was there during the day, so I got to know her, and I would help her with like her kids' school papers that she would have to sign, and like I would translate like this is what this means and whatever. And it was nothing. It was just like it took 5 minutes out of my day, but I was like, it's me not doing my job, right? Anyway, somehow my boss found out about that, and I ended up getting a $200 little bonus for like being a good team helper and whatever. Like that taught me that people watched how I moved, but not in a bad way, and that I was rewarded for doing behavior that necessarily wasn't moving the company forward, but it made the working environment better for everybody else. Like I had no idea that the impact that made. And that was really nice to be recognized. It was very surprising.
It made me think of this. I think it's probably a leadership poster in a lot of offices. Excuse me, a lot of offices, showing where the CEO spends time with the janitor or something like that, and a lot you learn a lot from a person from how they treat the janitor. I've seen that on several posters and memes and so forth, something like that. And that's one thing for the leader to do that, and of course inspire that. But to look for those behaviors and then reward them in other people really can drive the ethos and the energy around this person, then their team, and then the whole organization. And then people notice that, and then customers start to behave that way. I always found interesting that there is a lot of times with customer service organizations how the vendor treats or how the customer treats you,
Mm.
that's important. And if a customer mistreats you in inside sales or whatever, that is not okay. And managers take that very seriously. But on the other hand, when people do
Good
treat each
managers
other
do.
really well, yeah, and good managers should take that very seriously.
Yeah.
But when people treat each other well, or customer goes out of their way to be kind to the person, that is also just as important as our people being kind and responsive and helpful to people in the organization and the customers.
Yeah, it is. It also reminds me of it lets you be yourself. When you're in an environment where you're naturally rewarded for like you being you, that's the best position to be in because you're sort of unleashed to do your best work.
Right.
This is just like a little side thing that had nothing to do with your job, but when you're recognized for doing even the silly things, then you can just go out there and shine and do great work for that organization.
It's probably hard to maybe define or put your arms around, but there are organizations that say something like this: bring your whole self to work. But people may not feel free if people don't feel free to bring their whole self to work and to really explore who they are in the organization,
Hmm.
then that means nothing.
Yeah.
Like if the general feeling is you can't actually do it, but we have it on our little tagline, then that can actually be a negative. It's worse than just not saying it at all and having it be part of the quote unquote mission or
The
values or
DNA.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. The corporate DNA is, if the corporate DNA is fake and all those posters are fake, then yeah, you're just adding more cognitive load and like if you have to be two different people, it just it kills productivity in a company. Eventually, it just catches up with you. So it is hard, it is difficult, but a good leader will notice and reinforce those human behaviors that make organizations hum. And instead of looking at the metrics that look your pitch decks good, make your pitch decks look good.
Right. And then have this term I just heard these words together in a sentence talking through the different mass timber, working on a panel on the mass timber conference in Portland for home builders. And the organizers are saying we don't want cheerleaders. And in terms of like rah rah all the
Mm.
time about mass
Hmm.
timber, because there are real challenges, just like in business, there are real
Yeah.
challenges that we have to solve for. And we don't want to poo poo those and downplay them by, just cheerleading all the time. But when people find specific things that they can cheerlead about somebody's behaviors, or they can champion, and then that can extend and that finds its way, just like kind of a cancerous attitude person in an organization can really bring everyone down to mediocrity. On the flip side, when good behaviors are identified and then encouraged and then broadcast, then that has a very powerful effect in the opposite direction.
Yeah, there is such a thing as toxic positivity. And because
Yes,
it comes
I
off as
know.
fake. You have these rah-rah people, and it's like, well, you don't really get it then because I'm in the mire. I'm suffering here. These are very real negative things, and you're just trying to cheer me up. I need you to see me first. So yeah, it's got to do with genuine, curiosity and genuine really looking out instead of just your stereotypical, oh, good job guys, oh, let's get the week going, and the Monday morning motivation and whatever. Yeah, there's I think, yeah, it's got to be genuine, it's got to be heartfelt, and like you said, very specific. All right, so let's go to number 4, combining care with standards. So a good leader is going to call you out when your work is suffering, when you're going through something, not threaten to fire you or anything like that, especially if you've been a good performer. But we all go through everybody, we're human beings. We all go through things. Everybody's got something that they're going through at any particular time. And I remember when my mom had cancer, and at the same time, my grandfather got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I was very close with my grandfather. Those two things they devastated me. I was young at the time, and so, yeah, my work quality of my work suffered at the time too. Like you drive to work every day. It was the days where like everybody had to go in every single day. I had a 30-mile drive each way. So it was difficult to show up and be who I had been. And so, but he didn't HR me. He didn't comfort lie. He didn't. He just said, "This isn't who you are. This isn't. It's not who I know you to be. And what can I do to support you? But you can't keep like phoning it in like you've been doing." Like, so he kind of shook me up. He didn't scare me straight. He just kind of shook me and woke me up and said, let me support you through this, but you can't, just disappear.
That is a really good point because you have to, at some point, if you're just saying, being supportive and and rah-rahing and cheerleading, like we just talked about with the last point, without standards, then the ones who do really want to keep up with standards those will start to erode, and
Hmm.
it doesn't lift anybody who wasn't caring about them before, because not people might not know the situation, but other people notice, not just our bosses notice when
Right.
we've missed a step or something like that, or lost a step. So those standards are important, and how those are handled are very, very important. Now, this is kind of comical. My One of my favorite bosses ever, my first boss at a big company, he would constantly, and I think he knew this about me, like I was okay with this, wouldn't work with everybody, but he would call me up and say, "Are you trying to get fired? I don't want to fire you, but if you keep doing this, I'm gonna have to." And he would talk like just very, a lot of people might feel kind of, I don't know, sideways
Well,
with
he
that,
knew
but
he knew you well enough that you could take that. So
and
it's
he
not
knew
like
it was very motivating, and I found it kind of hilarious too. It became a thing over the years, and I really appreciated that for me, that work. But what I found out later, when I went to manage multiple lumber yards in the sales organization, and so I had 34 direct reports, and I had to pare that down, and it was a very interesting time career wise for me.
Mm,
That was my first time really leading a big team. And I found out very quick that what works with me does not work with hardly anyone else or very few people. And so I had to really learn very quickly that to pay attention to where people's growth was, and have those written, very transparent and obvious standards that we hold people to. Didn't matter if they're related to the owner or had been there 30 years. We still had to work through the friction of slippage. As I hate, it's kind of a cold term, but this, when someone's slipping,
mhm.
like, hey, how do we get you to here? And the frequency and the energy that takes, it takes a lot. You're the guy, the boss you were talking about. That takes a lot of energy. First of all, you have to be paying attention. You have to know the person well. You have to know how they're going to handle it. And then three, you have to commit that your care and energy is going to be a little lopsided as you help this person. Like, yeah, I know you're not this person. You're going through this right now. We have these standards. Let me help you get there. That's a commitment that not everyone has the energy or the time for or the willingness to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were talking, you were reminding me, I read a book called How Full Is Your Bucket many years ago when when I started managing people, because not everybody wants to be lauded publicly. Some people want a quiet, bonus check or like everybody has a love language for feedback. And some people need a little bit more coddling than others. And some of us can hear, hey, do you really want me to freaking fire you? Like
Right.
that works for some of us. It doesn't work for everybody. And those are the hard things, like you said, about being a leader, is having to manage uh, different personalities and different ways of seeing people and talking to people. But that's the job. That is the job. All right. So number five, this one's a little bit uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. A good leader will use their power to protect not just the company, but their people, not posture. And there's a story here that one weekend we were moving lines. It was, and we had hired mechanical contractors and electrical
Like
contractors to
manufacturing lines?
yeah, and so things needed to be shut down. That's why we did it on the weekend because the workers weren't there. And so we were moving things from one place to another. So we had these contractors here, and I was the one running that. I was kind of overseeing it. I had like the plans and like I knew where things needed to go, etc. And before the work got started that morning, Saturday morning, a couple of the contractors started catcalling me at me. And I ignored it. I was young. I was like, whatever. I was like, okay, guys, let's just do the work, right? And so we did the work and we got everything done. But Monday morning, when I got back to the office and I was reporting back to my boss, I did tell him that as a by the by, I wasn't complaining. I wasn't filing a complaint or anything. I didn't know you could. And, I'd been in engineering school with a bunch of guys. Like I was, whatever. It's a thing. Like women know this, that we're used to it, whether it's good or bad or right or wrong. So I was just like saying at the end, oh yeah, and when we started, like they said made some comments and whatever. They commented about like my jeans or whatever. And he fired them. Like they never came back. And
Wow.
I was floored. I was floored by that. And so I think a good leader will use their power to do what's right by their employees, not just the company. Obviously, the company could have been sued, right? If I had been litigious, if I knew I could sue or whatever. Like, so he was protecting the company too. But yeah, and never since has a leader done that for me.
Hmm.
So
The flip side to that is when action isn't taken about serious things and decisive action and quick action, it doesn't take long that people pay attention. People pay
mm,
attention. So people that won't put up with that themselves, they quit.
right.
It affects the whole feel of the workplace, the teams, the job sites, whatever it is. And when someone does take decisive action, it makes a real impact. People pay attention to that too. Say, "Oh, they have someone's back." They may not know the reasons behind it, but people don't just get fired for nothing usually.
Mm,
So, and then if someone has a reputation for standing up for their people, that reputation is quick-lived, meaning that it only takes one or two instances and how people treat and behave around people and protect them, and the whole organization knows about it. What do you think people talk about around the water cooler, or amongst themselves and text message and groups and stuff like that? Those are the things that people notice and it makes a difference. And that's when people say they call to talk to someone working at a company and go, "Hey, what's it like working there?" And it might take them a while to put their finger on it, on the reason why, because they love it, they're supported, all the things we've talked about. But if you ask somebody long enough, hey, why have you been there so long? How do you feel supported by management? These are the sort of things that they would bring up, and the kind of company and employers and managers you'd want to work for.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's the reputation. It's not just the one person, but it's protecting the culture and the reputation of the entire organization.
And it
And
doesn't take long. So, sorry to
mhm,
interrupt, but it made me think of this. That doesn't take long to establish that. If, let's say you realize your organization is, well, wow, I have to work on some of these things as a manager myself, or wow, our organization should work on this. And pick one thing. If you start working on it, people will notice. The people that really care will notice. It doesn't take a long time to start turning things around.
yeah, I agree. And you don't just use your power to protect necessarily, like, okay, this guy just fired these people who disrespected me, but you also use that to fight for your people. Like if they deserve a raise, they deserve a bonus, they deserve recognition of some sort, you use that power to build, to secure, a better living for them if they deserve it. Of course, you're not going to play favorites or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, there's many ways to use your power for good to protect your people because that also protects the future of the company. So it's custody, not just status. And
I like that.
look at me. and the corner office, right? All right. So number six, uh, thinking in terms of people's systems and not headcount. So thinking about the projects that you get assigned and how they affect the organization, cross-functional teams, customers, and people at large. And to your point, how the company is viewed, the reputation of the company. So, the example of the project for the ADA gate that not only helped this individual who was in a wheelchair, but it also, created or paved the way for other. This was a big company that I worked for, an enormous global company. And so maybe other distribution centers could use that. And it just so it was like a great ripple effect. So it's recognizing that one person or one group or one system or one team can affect an incredible amount of others. So making an environment that makes that capability sort of inevitable.
And especially in big organizations, I think it's hard to rise above the noise, but especially if someone's noisy all the time. But I've seen good leaders pick their battles and say it's kind of not a great term because it sounds negative,
Mm.
but pick their moments to raise the blister about something. And they see like, "Hey, notice what this distribution facility did that helped this person, and that can't be the only case. And look at the teamwork that brought this together, and this person took point." And it goes back to the saying of what one man can do, another can do, or one person can do, another can do. And that's why we have the word inspiration or aspiration. It makes people think like, oh wow, that was cool. The person did something cool for somebody, and I could do that too. I don't know what the opportunity is going to be, but maybe there's something that I'm missing, and it really can start to spread on its own in an organization. And he doesn't have to be hammered home every single day and like KPIs. Hey, did you do your calls this week? Did you do this? Did you build an ADA gate? How many ADA gates did you build? No, it's a story around a motivation and an outcome. And then other people can see it and they go, well, maybe not exactly that same exact thing. I'm not building an ADA gate. We don't have anyone here for that, etc. But what else could I do? Because I want to help people too. I like recognition too. I want to be on someone's radar, and that sort of attitude can achieve groundswell in small and large organizations. But if the leaders don't highlight it, then it just dies.
Yes. And you just touched on something very important and stuff that I'm seeing and hearing. With Project Fluent, I talk to a lot of leaders, but I also talk to a lot of individual contributors, especially in building product sales. And people right now seem to just be exhausted with the daily stand-ups or the Monday morning meetings and just
Right.
the 4 o'clock, Friday 4 p.m. Send me your numbers. How many outbound calls did you make? How many prospects did you talk to? How many meetings did you have? Like it seems to be all about just the KPIs and the execution, which 100%, absolutely, there's a place for that. But especially in sales, like all the rejection that people take week after week, day after day, when you lose a project, when all of these things kind of play a role. So you can't just be the person who is constantly holding a mirror. Like the mirror goes both ways. And people need to feel seen for the work that they do, even when they fail at their work. Like I've known a lot of reps that their managers just wouldn't help them. Like there's a particular friend of mine who struggled to open a new territory. She was in a city that was, by all accounts, moving and shaking, and lots of stuff was happening, but she was having trouble getting, like, breaking through. And her manager lived in another city and never came, never worked with her, never traveled with her. And didn't really help her. All she did was hold her accountable. Why aren't you da da da? Why is this not happening? Why da da da? Like it was always a why is this not happening? And there was no support, there was no mentorship, and there was no sort of like, here's what we could try, or let me travel with you, or let's strategize together. And so, you know, there is that sort of like, let's humanize the job. I think we've gotten away from the days where you could just recognize people because you saw them every day, because you worked with them every day. And I think we forget when we get to leadership roles how hard it is to do the day to day of that particular job whenever we were doing it.
There's, I know Jack Welch has said this in his books, but it's, I'm sure it's a fairly ubiquitous thought, but not everyone lives by it. And what I got to thinking about this particular thought over the 15 blitzes that we've done since June, so about a year and a half, in different cities. And I'm in this unique role where I don't have any direct reports. I go out to these markets. I work with the regional managers and territory managers. They don't report to me. I'm there to support them. I'm actually, trying to open this interiors part of the business in these markets. So they also get credit for that. So it's sort of working in concert with different motivations. But the chance to get to work with them in the field with frequency, learn what they're working on, learn some of the challenges, the friction they run into in the market or internally, and be able to pass those things on without having any kind of like weirdness in hierarchy or anything like that, has been really eye-opening to this one thought, and that is leaders should definitely be rolling up their sleeves and out there in the field working with their people, even if it seems minuscule. And I'll give you an example. We had a manager that said, made a comment, say, so and so wants me to go on a lunch and learn with them. But am I really going to travel for a day, go on lunch and learn with them, and then travel home? No, they're totally capable to do a lunch and learn on their own. What you don't get if you don't go with them, you don't get camaraderie, the relationship of manager and direct report. You don't really see the nuances of how they're running their business in their territory. And of course you're going to have always have coachable moments, but also opportunities to be like, I really like how you did that, or I really appreciate that when you're doing your presentation you didn't just stare at the screen the whole time. When you're giving your presentation you interacted with people. Well, if you don't go on these things, it may seem insignificant, a 1 hour lunch and learn. You don't get to see all of that. You don't get to, encourage them. You don't get to evaluate them. And it may seem so small, but when you show up for people in the small things, then what seemingly small, I don't think that's that small, the
Mm.
seemingly small things, then when it comes to the bigger things, you're going to have so much more credibility and that relationship will be so much stronger. And that's just something that stood out to me. In Jack Welch's book, he said the best managers are the ones that walk the floors. And he, as a CEO, a lot of people don't like, Jack Welch personality wise or whatever. But the one thing he did on a regular basis at GE was he was always, not always, he was constantly on the floor of the different
Hmm.
facilities. Where
And
they
there's a
made
way
jet
to do
engines,
that
and then
though.
where they made appliances, and the wiring shop, and walking it with the line managers, and that makes people feel like you're approachable, like you're important, like it makes them feel important, and that you're investing in them. That's so 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 important.
Yeah, except there is a way to do that and there's a way to not do it. And I know that I had a manager who I think you know, who had coins in his pocket, and you could hear him coming because he would like rattle his pockets, so that like everybody would be like, "Oh, here comes so and so." And he did that on purpose. That's not what you mean by
Right.
walking the floor. That is not what Tim means by walking the floor. Like there's a way to for it. It's you don't do it to instill fear and to say, Big Brother's watching. You do it to say, I care. I want to see the problems that you're running into. Like even working the line. I remember one of the first things, I don't know if I volunteered to do it or if I was assigned, but I worked every single like pick line And I did shipping, I did receiving, I did like every single job because as a process engineer, you have to like you work on process improvement, improving cycle times, all that stuff. And how can I tell a worker how to do their job better if I haven't done the job? So yeah, I mean, there, as a leader and you're walking a floor, you're doing that to train, you're doing that to instill the values and that DNA we were talking about of like reminding them of these are the important, these are our core values, these are the things we care about. Not like Big Brother's watching, I'm installing a camera here to watch you do work. That is not what that's about. It's about the employees feeling supported, feeling that somebody understands the job and that somebody's there to be there for them and to help them improve.
And that really builds so much goodwill that when extra pulling on the oars is required to get the boat going, people will do it.
Yeah.
Uh, Way back, this is 2003. I just started working at James Hardy, and my boss there, Gary Fawcett, love that guy. He would have once a month a dining table conversation. So he would just get pizza, have the team over to the house, and we would talk about the market. And of course, it was we had multiple people within like an hour of each other, so it was pretty easy to just drive over there. Not all teams are like that, but there were instances like that, and then scheduling ride-alongs. The way it worked at Hardy was Lou Grease, the CEO, or Robert Russell, who was the VP of Sales and Marketing at the time, and or any of the leadership, Jamie Chilcoff,
Mm.
Denise Bottrell, anyone could just drop in on a rep and do a ride along. Just, hey, I'm at the airport, come pick me up, which I loved. And but not everyone did. But he set these aren't to check on people. These people
Mhm.
want to see, the leaders want to see what's on the market. They also want to make sure I'm doing a good job, but they're not there
And
to.
customers want to see leaders too.
Yeah, and also he made a good point, which I've always thought was really really important, and still down to this day. Two people together in front of a customer is very grounding and adds solidarity and unity. You're both talking the same language. It helps them feel really good, especially if they're not familiar with your product. So
Absolutely.
that was great, and to be able to just joke with these guys and have access to them, and I wouldn't necessarily just like call them on their flip next cell phone, myself, but just to know that they're accessible and approachable. And I just remember I had this we had just launched XLD trim, which is a 1 inch thick fiber cement trim, so it's not light, right? And
Mhm.
so I made in my garage, I made this cool sample board, and we were going to go see a couple big developers in the Seattle area. And Rob Russell, he's a bodybuilder. I knew that about him. Anyhow, so he's carrying this fiber cement thing all over through Seattle, and
Those
he
big
goes, "So
hills.
is this like a backdrop for you, or what is this?" And so I explained to him, I'm trying to do the what we started calling the full wrap solution at the time, and he goes, "Okay, okay," and we were joking just in front of a customer. He goes, we walked up these stairs and we were, very warm. And the person, there's 7 or 8 people around the table, and they're like, "Oh, wow, those stairs are quite a lot." And Rob Russell holds up the thing, and it's 3 foot, 3.5 foot wide by 3.5 foot tall fiber cement, probably weighed 80
Mock
pounds
wall.
and
Yeah.
and he holds it up and he goes, "Yeah, this guy's been making me carry this all over Seattle today. This fiber cement stuff's heavy." And everyone just
Yes.
had a huge laugh because it not only like alleviated the whole conversation about fiber cement compared to vinyl. Of course, it's heavier, and but just the camaraderie. I never forgot that. And when I would go ride with people, I always try to bring a lightness, just
Mm.
bring a lightness about it, that it's not like if someone's going to get fired, that's not how they're going to get fired. You're going to invest with them. You're going to spend time with them and get to know them and their market, and they get to know you as a manager or someone in leadership or someone from corporate or something like that. And that just builds so much glue over time that makes, if I have something I want to bring up with people, I can bring it up with them, and I'm not going to get not listened to. I'm not going to get in trouble or anything like that. Yeah, I know I went on a
Yes.
diatribe there, but it
No,
reminded me of
this
that
is
story.
gold. This is gold because you are not their manager. You have theoretically no authority over them. And so that is the best kind of leader. It's a leader, you're a leader without accountability, and they still follow you. And that's just what's one of the hardest things to do. And a lot of people, there are a lot of books out there about that because a lot of people feel disenfranchised and they want to be leaders without having the title. And this is the formula right here. So hopefully you were listening to what Tim said. I think blitzes, especially when you're in sales, they're very effective, but they're very physically and emotionally and psychologically exhausting because you get a lot of rejection. You're moving around, especially if you're carrying an 80-pound mock wall with you. I mean, I don't know. So in Seattle with all those steep hills and such, so to have someone there who is not their boss, who is there to have fun, to kind of show them how it's done because you've done it for so many years, to help them succeed because you're in their market and they're the ones that get the commission for the sale. You're just there to support it. To me, that is the best kind of leadership. Is one that you're not even beating anything over their head. You don't design their KPIs or their OKRs or whatever, whatever you want to call it. And yet, you're there and you're showing up and you're doing this because you want the global result for the company.
It's been an amazing experience. Almost everyone has been super gracious. We have six or seven, eight people in a market doing this, and you do have to bring a lot of energy, especially if you're leading it. But
Hmm.
the reward is just connection, collaboration, all the C's. What's the other one? Uh, Not collaboration, camaraderie. So we're building connective tissue. Wow. Okay, that's enough C words. But we're building connective tissue, and it's kind of a unique position to be in, working across the entire company the way I get to, and to be able
Mm.
to share those insights, what I learn about markets. I hardly ever talk about people with my bosses or senior leadership, but I talk about markets, what's going on here, what successes are we having, and so forth. And I am totally agnostic. I don't have to, and we're not having direct. I hope more organizations do more of the individual contributor leadership type roles because it can be very powerful locally. People feel very free to share their feelings on different things. They know that they have trust there. It's been really really gratifying.
Yeah, and as we get older, those of us who've been in the industry a long time, we have other colleagues that are even older than us who are still doing this type
Even
of
older
work,
than us.
even older than us, who are still doing this type of work. And yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point. I think companies would be greatly benefited from hiring quote unquote seasoned people of the industry who have led teams, who have grown sales, who understand opening markets, who understand new product segment categories, and how people receive salespeople without managing them. I think you're onto something here.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm onto something, but what I have noticed is this. I feel like the traditional hierarchy of organizations, and I am big on org charts just because I think a line of report is important to
Oh,
know
accountability for
how
sure.
to get stuff
Yeah.
approved, and obviously you need that. But I feel like the Venn diagrams internal to organizations have been getting closer and overlapping a lot more maybe under the radar than folks have noticed. And if leaders pay attention to that, they can see that as a chance to have powerful learnings across all these different arcs that can speed up velocity in their organization and speed up connection. And I think they're already happening. It's just that we end up with these um, maybe these hard bubbles that kind of clink into each other as opposed to sort of overlapping and creating, essentially almost like an ikigai then situation organizationally. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to
Yeah.
exactly formulate that yet, but just as you said that, it made me think that this is
Yeah,
probably been
it's
happening for a
going
while.
from functional silos to ikigai, to a Venn diagram of like, here's this group, here's that group, this is where they overlap, and then there's the third group, and this is where all three overlap, and this is like the secret sauce and the superpower.
It brings it all together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well, we can't do a show on good leadership without kind of maybe talking about the red flag patterns. So, no judgment here. Nobody's perfect. And we've all maybe at some point or another fallen into, or maybe been tempted, but maybe we didn't go through with it, for some of these patterns. So, these are things to look out for. If you're an employee in an organization, and you find any of these patterns going on, hopefully not, but if you do, those are red flags to me that you need to say something, or maybe you need to go somewhere else. I don't know. But if you're a leader and you recognize yourself in any of these, no judgment again, but something for you to look into. So these are, in my experience, the red flags of leadership. Leaders who hoard information. So people who think you're not sovereign and you can't think for yourself, and so they hoard information that would be really good for you to know your job and to do your job well. Those are red flags. Leaders who fear smart people. So competency envy. I've known those. And you don't want to work for somebody who is insecure about your strengths and your potential. That's not a true leader. Just look at, some of the examples that I've shared from really great leaders. Leaders who reward optics. So if you're just entering KPIs into Salesforce because it looks great, and your leader's like, yes, I need more of that crap in Salesforce, but it's not real, it's fake pipeline. That's a red flag for you. Eventually, the truth comes out, and it's not going to look good for you. Um, Another red flag for me is leaders who let politics replace protection. So this can show up in many different ways, but I saw a LinkedIn post recently about somebody complaining that like the top performers, a lot of top performers, like the best salesperson, for example, who is like he kills whales and brings them in every year, year after year. This is like the top performer far and away, but they're a complete douchebag. They're protected. Like if they're a quote unquote cancer to everybody else, but they're a producer, they're protected. And that's not good leadership. And companies need to take a good hard look at that and remember that you're going to drive away everybody else just because you're protecting this one person who, brings in the money. Yes, but could you train other people, or could you hire someone else who can do just as good? And another red flag for me is leaders who only show up when something breaks. I mentioned my friend who, was having a hard time in her market, and her manager was just beating her up over the negative result, but not really traveling with her, not really being there for her. So, so yeah. What other ones do you know? Do you see? I think these cover some of the stuff you talked about too.
Yeah. One thing I'd never heard it before. Went to when I was working at this lumber company, 7 locations, and really, really cool people working there, and ended up getting acquired after we kind of got through a lot of these things that we've talked about actually today as an organization. So, but part of my job there was organizational development. One thing I heard quite a bit from people in the organization was this one person was called a seagull manager or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Anyhow, or they come in and like pick everything, pick land and poop on everything and eat everyone's lunch and then take off. And
Mm,
and there were other few other terms. So that one stuck with me. I'm like, wow. So
it's a
anyhow,
great one.
got to talk with this person, and they it's kind of a personality thing where they kind of go in, stir stuff up, and they think they're adding value, and that's also their personality, kind of like a stir the pot type of personality. And some people, it's like, hey, he's motivating or whatever, maybe, but generally it just causes a disruption, and that's what
You
it got
got to
down to.
earn that
They
place.
they had no idea, and this is one of the owners, but they had no idea that that's what how they were viewed, and immediately started, instead of just until they could fix that, they just stopped dropping in on people because it just caused too much, like everyone's hair going crazy and they're sweating and like, oh my goodness, I just had a visit from the Seagull manager, and and you could see it. So it was actually almost an overnight
Mm,
difference. And it was really just knowledge, just understanding, oh, wow, I had no idea I was viewed this way and that it affected people that way. Not everyone's going to respond so quickly like that. But we can, if that's us and we realize, well, I kind of wonder why everyone's sort of harried and carried after I leave, after I leave the market or I get down off the phone with them or whatever. It's a good, thing to look at is this me, is this how I am viewed?
yes.
And we may think we're doing good, and sometimes stirring the pot is important, but it should be done strategically.
Yes.
For instance, I'll give you an example. Has to do with the distributor. So the goal was to quote unquote stir the pot, and so the this is at a different company. The manager decided, a couple of them decided they're just going to let a distributor go and just start selling direct. There's this one part of the country, and so it caused this huge they said that we need to mix up, we need to stir the pot, we need to this isn't working, and maybe it wasn't working, and maybe it's not recoverable, but there was no replacement for the territory people that were working in the market every day for, like, hey, how are we going to handle payments? How are we going to get the material to the job site? We just have literally no support here. So there's sometimes value in stirring things up, but I would say hardly ever.
Yeah, great point. Great way to end the episode. And I think, yeah, real leadership is rare because it's hard. And as you just said, self-awareness is half the job. If you're in leadership, you need to have some your blind spots checked every so often. And you need to think about, are you doing any of these red flag things? And are you seeing your people for who they are? But also understand that, I see you. It's very, very difficult to be an emotional container, to be an ethical authority, to have the patience to develop your people and your team. And these are real human beings with real lives, with real problems, and to have that willingness to make other people powerful without that toxic rah rah cheerleading thing. It's hard, and I see you, but it is possible. I've had great leaders. I can honestly say that I've tried to be a good leader when I've been in leadership, and I hope this has been good. And I'd love to hear. We would both love to hear if what did we miss? What are some other good leadership traits and bad patterns and red flags that we need to look out for?
Yeah, what I learned from Todd Tomilak, who was an awesome manager for me, um, was what are the watch out fors. Now that's not just for leadership. He talked about that in the context of a lot of things, like customers going into a new market, launching a new product, buying a company. What are the watch out fors? And I'd never heard that term before then, but I love it. And we should definitely look at those things for ourselves. What are the watch out fors here? And I think that reflection it will at least help us. But if we're in leadership, it'll have compounding force multiplying effects across the organization as we do that.
Yeah, and there are leadership groups out there that you can join that are that will help you. So I was doing Dan Pink's like annual review. I'm not done with my goals for 2026, but I was doing his thing, and he recommends having a network, a challenge network. And so I'm like, okay, who could be my challenge network? So somebody who will kindly and gently call you out so that you can improve. And we all need that. And it can't be somebody you work with or somebody who works for you or who you work for. It's got to be an industry colleague that sees you and that you can share these things in a safe space. But yeah, we all need a challenge network to make us better.
I like that. I don't know how many of those are around. I know there are a couple like the LBM exec and some other ones for the building industry for executives. But one example outside our industry is Hampton, which is
Hmm.
Sam Parr from My First Million and The Hustle. He has a company called Hampton,
Yeah.
and that is about people having those real conversations. You get set up in a group of 6 to 8 people or whatever that peers, and you can just you can just talk about all those things without it number one getting out and without it feeling unsupported or like people won't understand you because these are the peers, these are your peers. So
Yeah.
I wish there were more things like that for
There's
our
one in New
industry, but there's a
York.
lot of like
Yeah.
non-industry specific ones like you said.
Right. And I think maybe it does need to be non-industry specific because you learn so much from, just other industries and things that you can apply. You and I do that all the time. But yeah, the one I think I told you about it, Punks and Pinstripes in New York City.
Oh right.
And they meet in person, which I was like, I wonder, I understand why they meet in person because these things, I bet you like they put their phones like somewhere safe and, everybody like turns it in and like so that you can have those real discussions in that like safety of, okay, this isn't going to get out and no pictures, no, like
Right.
no,
Yeah. Well, that's huge. It's huge.
yeah, yeah.
Put it in a Faraday bag or like in the old saloons or whatever where you have to check your gun at the entrance before you go into town or into
Yes,
the
you
saloon or
just like
something like
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. That's the pod.
that's the pod. This podcast is made available free to you, our loyal listener, thanks to support from Project Fluent. Take the assessment if you haven't, and Advancing Prefab. Remember that Build Perspectives 10. Use that code for your 10% discount, and hopefully, we will see you there. Both Tim and I will be there. If today's conversation resonated and you want more strategic and technical insights on prefab, check out Advancing Prefab and Advancing Prefabrication in Dallas. It's going to be February 2nd through the 5th, 2026. And the link and the discount code are going to be in this show's show notes.
And if you love build perspectives, especially these leadership perspectives or anything else we've talked about, please reach out on LinkedIn and like, comment, subscribe on whatever platform you listen on. You can also let us know, just shoot a message like, "Hey, you guys should talk about this. We'd love to hear more about this." All of that feedback helps us to bring new listeners, to grow our audience, to grow the content, and have something that is needed, helpful, relevant, and valuable to you.
Yes, we love getting messages and we love hearing the feedback. And yeah, please let us know what you think. So, hopefully, this has been entertaining architecture and construction talk and fresh perspective, something that Tim's dad says you can never have too much of.
Thanks, everybody. Have fun out there.
Bye bye.